Have you ever felt an itch that just wouldn't go away? One that seemed to come from nowhere with no rash, no irritation, and no clear cause. What if that itch wasn't just annoying, but your body trying to whisper a warning? Most of us shrug off itchiness as something minor. A little dry skin, a change in laundry detergent, maybe a bug bite. But for older adults, especially those over 60, certain types of persistent itching may be far more serious than they seem. These aren't just surface irritations. They can be early, subtle red flags, signs of cancer developing beneath the skin before any obvious symptoms appear. In today's video, we're diving into 5 very specific areas of the body where unexplained itching could be the earliest clue that something deeper is going on. We're not talking about random passing itches. These are consistent patterns observed in patients who were later diagnosed with cancers such as lymphoma, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, and even skin cancer. So stay with me until the end because this isn't just about identifying body parts. We'll explain the why behind each area, what causes the itch, which type of cancer it's linked to, and most importantly, how to distinguish between an everyday irritation and a potentially life-saving warning sign. This video is not meant to cause fear. It's about awareness. It's about listening closely when your body speaks, especially when it does so quietly. Because in the early stages of cancer, the signs aren't always loud. Sometimes they show up as a simple itch in a very specific place. And the earlier you recognize that sign, the better your chances of early detection and successful treatment. Let's begin. Sign 1, persistent itching on the lower legs. Now picture this. You're in your late 60s or 70s. You notice an itch on your lower legs, perhaps on the shins or calves that just won't let up. There's no redness, no visible rash, no new lotion or soap. Just this constant nagging itch that seems to intensify at night, disturbing your sleep and refusing to respond to moisturizers. Most would assume it's aging skin, right? Maybe the weather's dry, maybe your skin's thinning with age. But here's what many don't realize. This exact symptom has shown up repeatedly in individuals later diagnosed with blood-related cancers, especially lymphoma. This isn't your average itch. It's deeper, it's more stubborn, it doesn't flare and fade, it lingers night after night. So why does this happen? The answer lies in how lymphoma and similar cancers affect the immune system. Lymphomas originate in the lymphatic system, a complex network that's essential for immune defense and fluid drainage. As cancer cells spread through this system, they release certain inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. These chemicals don't always cause pain right away, but they can irritate nerve endings beneath the skin. The result, a persistent itch that has no visible cause because it's not about the skin. It's coming from within. Take George, for example. He's 75 and shared his story at a cancer awareness seminar. For nearly 6 months, his only symptom was an uncontrollable itch on the front of his legs. His doctor initially suggested eczema or maybe a mild allergic reaction to detergent. But when blood tests revealed abnormal white cell counts and further scans detected swollen lymph nodes in his chest, the real picture emerged: Hodgkin's lymphoma. George said something powerful. The itch came first, long before the fatigue, long before the diagnosis. And his story isn't rare. While not every lower leg itch means cancer, the pattern is what matters. If there's no rash, no obvious cause, and it's been going on for weeks or even months, it's time to pay attention, especially if it's accompanied by other subtle symptoms like night sweats, fatigue, or unexplained weight loss. As we grow older, our bodies often stop shouting. They whisper. Pain might not come until much later. Tumors may be too deep to feel. But nerves respond. And sometimes they respond with an itch deep, relentless, and telling. So if you or someone you love finds themselves constantly scratching their legs, applying lotion with no relief and wondering why nothing seems to work, don't ignore it. Ask a doctor, mention the pattern, request blood work if necessary. Because in many cases, the body speaks long before illness becomes visible. Listening can make all the difference. Sign 2, itching between the shoulder blades or upper back. Now let's move to another specific spot, the upper back right between the shoulder blades. This is the kind of itch many people dismiss. Maybe you blame it on poor posture, an itchy sweater, or your mattress. Maybe it's that impossible to reach spot that makes you reach for a back scratcher every night. But when that itch is persistent, especially if it feels like it's coming from under the shin rather than on the surface, it could be something more serious. In fact, doctors have linked this particular sensation to early signs of pancreatic cancer. Now, you might be asking, how on earth can an itch on your back be related to an internal organ like the pancreas? It sounds strange, but there's a very real connection. As pancreatic tumors begin to grow, one of the first things they can do is block the bile ducts, those narrow tubes that carry bile from the liver into the intestines to help digest food. When bile can't drain properly, bile salts start to accumulate in the bloodstream. And one of the side effects of those excess bile salts, they irritate the sensory nerves in the skin, particularly in areas rich in nerve endings like the upper back. This is where it gets even more telling. The itching often starts months before other symptoms like abdominal pain, jaundice, or digestive issues ever appear. It's one of the earliest and quietest clues your body may give. Linda, a 70-year-old woman I once spoke with, described it as a phantom itch. She would wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., scratching her upper back furiously. She tried everything: lotions, back creams, changing her bedding. Nothing worked. And what stood out most was her description. It felt like it was coming from inside, not the skin. Eventually, after a few months of persistent itching and mild fatigue, she visited her doctor. Blood tests showed elevated liver enzymes. A scan followed. The result: early-stage pancreatic cancer. The itch once again had come first. These cases remind us that when something doesn't feel right, especially if it persists, it's worth investigating. So if you've been struggling with a strange itch in the middle of your back that won't respond to typical skincare, and you can't trace it to fabric posture or dry air, talk to your doctor. Mention pancreatic health. Ask for liver and bile function tests. It may seem unrelated, but that conversation could be life-saving. Sometimes it's the smallest signals that carry the loudest warnings. In the previous part, we saw how a seemingly minor itch on the back led to the discovery of a hidden tumor in the pancreas. Let's continue that story, because what happened next can teach all of us an important lesson. After going in for blood work due to unrelated fatigue, her results revealed something unexpected. Elevated liver enzymes. That one abnormal result triggered a deeper investigation. Doctors ordered imaging scans, which eventually revealed a small tumor in her pancreas. It wasn't just any tumor, it was pressing directly against her bile duct. Here's the eerie part: that persistent back itch was her only real symptom. No sharp pain, no yellow skin, no dramatic weight loss. Just an itch. A stubborn, unnerving itch that refused to go away. There were no visible rashes, no irritation on the skin's surface, only a deep internal sensation that something wasn't quite right. And yet the only reason this tumor was caught early, before it became life-threatening, was because she trusted her body. She chose to speak up even when it felt like a minor annoyance. That decision might have saved her life. This is why the location of an itch can matter. General back itchiness is common and often harmless. It might come from dry skin, tight clothing, or even pressure against a chair. But if the itch is in a specific spot, especially in the upper back or between the shoulder blades, and it lingers, and nothing seems to relieve it, not moisturizers, not changes in detergent, not even a warm bath, then it's time to pay closer attention, especially if this itch is accompanied by darker colored urine, pale stools, or unexplained fatigue. These symptoms may point to something deeper, something hidden in the liver, gallbladder, or pancreas. The back in this case becomes a messenger. It starts whispering about a problem buried elsewhere, often in the gut. For older adults, these subtle signals can be easy to ignore. We tell ourselves not to overreact. We blame aging or dryness or the weather. We don't want to seem dramatic or troublesome. But the truth is, our bodies often know things before we do. That silent itch tapping gently at the same spot every day could be your body waving a small red flag. If your skin looks normal, but the itch doesn't quit, if you find yourself scratching the same place over and over, even in your sleep, listen to that. It might be your body trying to speak up when no one else can. And if you're still here watching this video, that means you care about these signs, and I appreciate that deeply. Please comment the number 2 below if you're still with me, so I know you're following along. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit that button and turn on the notification bell. Your support allows us to keep creating informative, life-saving content just like this. Now let's continue. Sign 3: itchy scalp without flakes or dandruff. An itchy scalp might not seem like a big deal, Most people chalk it up to dry air, a change in weather, or a shampoo that didn't sit quite right. And that's often the case, especially for older adults who naturally experience drier skin as they age. But there's a kind of scalp itch that goes beyond surface irritation. One that feels different, not just dry, but tingling, crawling, sometimes even burning. It might move from one side of your head to the other. And most tellingly, it doesn't respond to anything. Not to dandruff shampoos, not to scalp oils, not even to prescription treatments. It just stays. This kind of persistent itch, especially in the absence of visible flakes, redness, or irritation, can sometimes be an early warning sign of something more serious, such as blood-related cancers like leukemia or skin cancers that begin on the scalp. You see, when leukemia cells start to multiply in the bloodstream, they can interfere with how the body handles inflammation. The result, nerve endings may become hypersensitive, producing unusual sensations, especially on the scalp and neck. These itches aren't caused by dryness or sweat, but by deeper disruptions in immune function. I remember the case of Henry, a 73-year-old man who shared his experience. He noticed his scalp would start itching every afternoon. At first, he thought it was a reaction to his shampoo, so he changed it. When that didn't help, he figured maybe his favorite cap was irritating his skin, so he stopped wearing hats altogether. Still, the itch remained. Finally, he decided to get a full blood panel done, mainly because he'd been feeling more tired lately. That test revealed unusually high white blood cell counts. A bone marrow biopsy later confirmed the diagnosis: early-stage chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Looking back, Henry realized that his scalp had been the first and only part of his body giving him a sign that something was wrong. This is exactly why these small, persistent symptoms matter. Older adults already deal with a certain level of skin dryness, so when an itch comes and goes, it's easy to dismiss. But a cancer-related itch doesn't play by those rules. It doesn't improve. It doesn't fade. It lingers, nags, and feels strangely disconnected from anything on the surface. And it's not just leukemia. Skin cancers, particularly those on the scalp, can begin as nothing more than a small itchy patch. No lump, no mole, no rash. Just an area that feels irritated, especially in spots where the hair has thinned. Sometimes it looks like dry skin. Sometimes it's just a bump you can barely see. But if it's always in the same place, and if it keeps itching despite everything you try, it deserves a closer look. Because the scalp is hard to see on your own, it's helpful to ask someone you trust, a spouse, a caregiver, or even your hairdresser, to check it for you regularly. A handheld mirror can help, but nothing beats another set of eyes. If you've had a stubborn itch that's lasted for weeks and it won't respond to anything you put on, take that seriously. Especially if you've also noticed unusual fatigue, easy bruising, or just a general feeling that something is off. Sometimes it's not the big dramatic symptoms that matter most. Sometimes it's the small, quiet signs, the ones we nearly overlook, that carry the biggest warnings. Sometimes the most dangerous signs are the ones that feel too small or too personal to talk about. And after we've looked at itching in places like the chest or underarms, it's time to pay attention to a region most people hesitate to even mention, yet one that often holds early clues to something serious. Sign 5, persistent itching in the anal or genital area. Let's be honest, few things are more uncomfortable, more embarrassing, or more commonly ignored than an itch down there. It's awkward to mention, especially as we age. Many older adults would rather keep it to themselves, chalking it up to dry skin, poor hygiene, or maybe just a bad reaction to soap or toilet paper. But when that itch doesn't go away, when it lingers for weeks, months, even after trying creams, powders, or changes in hygiene, it's time to stop brushing it off. Because sometimes that itch is trying to tell you something much deeper. In both men and women, chronic itching in the anal or genital area can be a quiet early symptom of certain cancers. We're talking about anal cancer, vulvar cancer, and yes, even penile cancer. While these cancers are not the most common, they do happen, and they're often missed in their early stages because the warning signs seem so small, so easy to ignore. One of the trickiest things about this kind of itch is how easily it disguises itself. People assume it's something harmless, maybe a bit of chafing from walking, irritation from incontinence pads, or just a side effect of aging. In some cases, that may be true. But here's the difference: when the itching doesn't respond to anything you try, when it keeps coming back, and especially when it starts to feel raw, burning, or more than skin deep, that's a sign something else may be going on. Let me share the story of Eugene, a 76-year-old man who experienced this firsthand. For nearly a year, Eugene thought he was dealing with simple hemorrhoid irritation. He tried everything: topical creams, sitz baths, fiber supplements, even cold compresses. But the itch never fully went away. Eventually, he followed his gut feeling that something just didn't feel right and went to see a colorectal specialist. After a scope exam, doctors found a small lesion inside the anal canal. It was an early-stage tumor, quiet, slow-growing, and dangerously easy to miss. If Eugene had kept ignoring it, it might have progressed without warning. The same principle applies to women. Vulvar cancer, though relatively rare, becomes more common after the age of 60. And one of its earliest, most overlooked symptoms, a recurring itch on or near the outer genital area. There may not be a noticeable lump, but the skin may begin to feel a bit rougher than usual, slightly thinner, or take on a faint discoloration. Many women assume it's just hormonal, part of the postmenopausal dryness they've come to expect. Sometimes that's exactly what it is. But if the itching becomes relentless, worsens at night, or fails to improve despite all the usual remedies, moisturizers, hormone creams, gentle cleansers, that's your cue. Don't dismiss it. Don't assume it's nothing. This region of the body is filled with nerve endings, highly sensitive and incredibly responsive to internal changes. That's why it's often one of the first places to alert you when something isn't quite right beneath the surface. Whether it's a shift in skin cells, nerve inflammation, or swelling in nearby lymph nodes, a persistent itch, especially when it's focused on one side or a small specific area, should not be ignored. And yet most people hesitate to say anything. They worry they'll be laughed at, or that they're overreacting. Or perhaps they feel embarrassed, like it's a silly thing to bring up with their doctor. But here's the truth. Silence can be far more dangerous than curiosity. A simple conversation about a persistent itch could be the one thing that leads to early detection, more effective treatment, and perhaps even saves a life. So what's the takeaway? If the itch won't go away, don't assume it's normal. Don't let shame or uncertainty stop you from speaking up. Let a healthcare provider take a look. Most of the time, it's probably nothing serious. But every now and then, that persistent itch is your body trying to whisper something critical before it has to scream. Because when it comes to cancer or any serious internal issue, early detection often starts with something small, something subtle, and someone brave enough not to ignore it.